Nigeria and its criminal justice system by Firotomi. Comprehensive chapter by chapter summary. Quick summary audiobook created by the Zillion Pro. This book explores the complexities, flaws, and realities of Nigeria's criminal justice system. Firotomi offers a critique of the system, delving into its historical roots, systemic corruption, and the socio-political implications for Nigeria. Below is a chapter by chapter summary. Chapter 1. Introduction. A broken system. Firotomi introduces the reader to Nigeria's criminal justice system, describing it as inherently flawed and dysfunctional. He highlights the disconnect between justice as an ideal and its practical application in Nigeria. The chapter provides a historical overview of the system, tracing its colonial roots and how it was designed to serve colonial interests rather than justice. Key takeaway. Nigeria's justice system was not built to serve the common man but to protect the powerful. Chapter 2. Colonial legacy and structural deficiencies. This chapter delves deeper into the colonial foundations of Nigeria's legal and justice systems. Firotomi argues that the system was designed to maintain control rather than promote fairness or equity. He examines how these colonial structures persist today, with laws and institutions that often work against the marginalized. Key takeaway. A justice system rooted in colonialism perpetuates inequality and oppression. Chapter 3. The role of corruption. Firotomi identifies corruption as a significant impediment to justice in Nigeria. From the police to the judiciary, he outlines how bribery, favoritism, and political interference undermine the delivery of justice. He shares real-life cases to illustrate the systemic corruption that plagues the system. Key takeaway. Corruption at every level of the criminal justice system erodes public trust and hinders justice. Chapter 4. The police, enforcers or oppressors? This chapter critiques the Nigerian police force, highlighting its inefficiency, lack of training, and susceptibility to corruption. Firotomi discusses the culture of brutality and extortion, emphasizing how the police often victimize the very citizens they are meant to protect. Key takeaway. A dysfunctional police force exacerbates the challenges within the criminal justice system. Chapter 5. The judiciary, a compromised arbiter. Firotomi examines the Nigerian judiciary, focusing on its independence, or lack thereof, inefficiencies, and susceptibility to external pressures. He discusses how judicial processes are often delayed or manipulated, leaving many without timely or fair resolutions. Key takeaway. Judicial independence and efficiency are critical for a functioning justice system, yet both are lacking in Nigeria. Chapter 6. Prisons, punishment over rehabilitation. In this chapter, Firotomi explores Nigeria's prison system, describing it as overcrowded, underfunded, and punitive rather than rehabilitative. He highlights the plight of awaiting trial inmates, many of whom languish in prison for years without a court hearing. Key takeaway. Nigeria's prisons fail to rehabilitate offenders, perpetuating cycles of crime and injustice. Chapter 7. The plight of the marginalized. Firotomi discusses how the poor and marginalized suffer the most under the current system. He explains how wealth and influence can buy justice, while the less privileged are left to face the full brunt of the system's inadequacies. Key takeaway. The Nigerian justice system disproportionately targets and penalizes the poor. Chapter 8. Political interference and the elite's influence. This chapter highlights how political and elite interests undermine the criminal justice system. Firotomi provides examples of how politicians and influential individuals manipulate legal processes to evade accountability. Key takeaway. Political interference compromises the integrity of Nigeria's criminal justice system. Chapter 9. Human rights violations. Firotomi addresses widespread human rights abuses in Nigeria, including unlawful arrests, extrajudicial killings, and police brutality. He critiques the lack of accountability for these violations and the culture of impunity that allows them to persist. Key takeaway. Protecting human rights is fundamental, yet the Nigerian system consistently fails to do so. Chapter 10. Activism and the fight for justice. The chapter discusses the role of civil society, activists, and legal reformers in challenging the injustices within the system. Firotomi highlights the importance of grassroots movements and public awareness in driving change. Key takeaway. Citizen activism and public accountability are critical to reforming the system. Chapter 11. The role of international influence. Firotomi examines how international organizations and foreign governments influence Nigeria's justice system. He critiques their limited understanding of local realities and their often superficial engagement with reform. Key takeaway: international interventions must align with local contexts to be effective. Chapter 12. Steps toward reform. This chapter provides actionable solutions for improving Nigeria's criminal justice system. Firotomi advocates for systemic reforms, including increased funding for the judiciary, police reform, prison decongestion, and better training for law enforcement. Key takeaway: comprehensive reform is necessary to address systemic issues and ensure justice. Chapter 13. A Vision for Justice. In the final chapter, Firotomi outlines his vision for a fair, efficient, and people-centered justice system. He emphasizes the need for leadership, accountability, and a collective commitment to change. Key takeaway: transforming Nigeria's criminal justice system requires collective effort and visionary leadership. Conclusion: Nigeria and its criminal justice system by Del Firotomi is both a critique and a call to action. The book exposes the systemic flaws within Nigeria's justice system and emphasizes the urgent need for reform. By addressing corruption, political interference, and human rights abuses, Firotomi offers a roadmap for creating a system that serves all Nigerians equitably. Like and share.
I'm saying that Ariafe Babalola corrupted the judiciary, and in corrupting the judiciary, it came across my practice. When I came across it, I challenged it as a lawyer and I fought it to the point where he could not enjoy the fruit of his exertion in the Supreme Court. In writing the letter that he wrote to the then Chief Justice of Lagos State, Ayomide Philip, he libeled me and I sued him for libel. And when I sued for libel, the machines of corruption went into overdrive and a case that should never have been killed at the preliminary stage was killed. If Ariafe Babalola was the only person who is licensed to enjoy that level of impunity, that's different. It's not about him. It's a system-wide problem. You simply can't get justice from the system.
What up? Nigeria jaga jaga, everything scatter scatter. Come on, they suffer. Bossa, gunshot in the air. Nigeria jaga jaga, everything scatter.